different decks. What are your thoughts going into this as we have Will Krueger on Titan on the left and Jack Strepek on Goblins on the right here?
Yeah, so I mean, Goblins is like this fringe modern deck that has some actually really fast kills available to it. There's a couple things you can do. We'll get more into that later, and play sort of a lot of high power sideboard cards. Amulet Titan is sort of this mainstay of modern that has been around for a long time, has gone very fast and very efficient. He can play through a lot of hate, but also kill very quickly. And Will Krueger is someone, we've seen here on the NRG series for a long time. Very proficient, very heads up player. Has a lot of Pro Tour success, Mox champion. The accolades go on. So someone like him picking up this deck, I think, is a good sign for some tight gameplay about to happen.
Right, as we are seeing Urza Saga, Arboreal Grazer for Will here. Now, Mason, here's a little trivia question. Without looking at their deck list, who do you think has more? Do you think Will has more lands or Jack has more creatures?
Ooh, that's tough. I bet Jack just probably only has 4 vials. So I'm going to go with Jack has more creatures because the deck typically only plays it plays goblins, vial lands. And so I think probably the MBFCs too from MH3 might have helped that as well.
You are correct. Jack has 33 creatures to Will's measly 31 lands.
Wow.
So beats them by 2.
Now here's a question. Is Will's deck 60 or 61?
Will's deck is 60.
Makes you think.
Dom Harvey would never. Multiple caverns here. Who knows what Jack could be naming with these caverns? As we are going to go ahead and have our first creature played here for Jack.
Runvolt Horde Master? Do you not know all the goblins by heart? By just the art? Does your brain have useful information in it, Niall?
Runvolt Horde Master is going to be the Goblin cast. This is going to be a little bit of a Goblin Lord for the other ones. And also generate us some value.
Yeah, this is one of the...
Sorry, go ahead, Mason.
I was going to say, this is one of the new goblins that they got in the last couple of years. It's pretty nice. It gives you some protection from interaction while still just letting you do the beatdown plan, which is sort of the backup for this deck.
Now we see Will has the Amulet of Vigor on the field here as we're going to go exploring.
And Will dangerously close to being able to win the game here. Has some weird lines available to him. Picked up a Summoner's Pact. So could pact for the Grazer in order to go up 1 mana. I think that doesn't really give anything on this board state. Lumra is the only spell in his hand besides that. Most players have moved away from things like Azusa as well, so we're not going to probably see something like that happen. But yeah, looks like
Will. Yes, we're going to see the Growth Chamber come up. Have the Amulet trigger. We're going to bounce back the Boseiju.
Yep. And then thanks to Explorer, play the Forest.
And play our Forest. So, a lot of mana up for Will right now.
Yeah, and normally this is the turn Will ideally would be going off, but just doesn't quite. He's 1 mana short from being able to get a Lumra or a Titan in play. As Goblin Trash Master comes down.
Yeah, so you're going to see Jack bolt in this Boggart Bog, take 3 damage, and play this Goblin Trash Master. Pretty nice being able to sacrifice a goblin, destroy an artifact, get rid of that amulet, and also a Goblin Lord.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Jack's the trash man now and takes those amulets down.
Yeah, so you're going to see a construct be made on the end of the turn there. It's a measly 1/1 construct at the moment. So we're going to float a mana as this making a good impression of an Urza Saga here, goes and gets an Amulet of Vigor.
Yep. And then you see Will, immediately the first thing we want to do is play a land. That's because Goblin Trash Master could blow up the amulet, and Will wants to make sure that he has priority, before there's a chance for Jack to interact. So smart play there from Will. Just going to be like, hey, I'm going to get my untapped trigger for sure. You can blow up this amulet if you want, but I've got my mana
Yeah, Crumbling Vestige is going to come down. We're going to float a green, untap it, and then the amulet will get destroyed there. Construct back to being a 1/1 for those following along at home. And then here is the Pact.
All right.
And that's Titan. We have exactly enough mana for it.
And now this is where we go into the hyperbolic time chamber because we can't quite win this turn due to that Trash Master stopping our amulets. A classic play pattern.
Yeah, we're gonna get our lands. We don't have any amulet triggers. We do have, as you mentioned earlier, the Lumra in hand. We also have in hand the Aftermath Analyst. Very important card in these current contemporary amulet lists. We've got that Boseiju that we bounced back earlier.
Yes, I think maybe what Will's trying to figure out here is one, should I play around something like a Blood Moon in the main deck? I'm playing against this Goblins deck. Will's not going to be, super familiar with all of the ones and twos of, probably knows the combo that's available to this deck. So knows that that's kind of coming, knows that there's a fair plan, but it's probably trying to figure out, okay, do I need to keep this basic in play because of a Blood Moon to pay for my Pact? I can do that pretty easily. I kind of want to get this Lotus Field into play so that my Loomer can do a little more. There's a lot of different options available to Will here.
Yeah, Will in a really, really tough spot. As you said, Blood Moon could just be a devastating effect. Looks like we're going to get Otawara in a Growth Chamber, bouncing the Otawara back to hand. Get in for one with that construct. You go, little guy.
Bam.
Put some damage on the board as we pass back over to Jack with it's like a mountain and a bunch of creatures in hand here. We do see the Kiki Jiki, but it looks like instead that is going to be a Goblin Ringleader. So we're going to reveal the top 4 here. Put all the goblins into our hand. Did we only hit one there?
Only a Sting Scourger was hit.
That's tough.
That's
tough.
Well, luckily we have the Ringleader, so it's staring down the Will drew an amulet.
That's huge. As he pays for the Pack trigger. Not going out like that. Not losing the game that way.
Mm-hmm. You can see NRG owner Norm there in the background taking some pictures. We don't normally get to see him on this side of the camera.
And it looks like we are considering how to sequence this just right. Looks like an Echoing Deeps in hand there. We know about the Boseiju and the Otawara.
I think Will has it from here. I could be mistaken. We're going to have to see exactly how he wants to go about things here. The new build, it's interesting. There's a lot of like graveyard integration into this combo thanks to Aftermath Analyst. But you sometimes like it's very weird just because of like you're trying to play around things and that's where it gets complicated. Other times it's really just like I won. Like it's long, it's convoluted. I'll say it all when it happens, but it's a very unique build of the deck that's, Amulet has always been either something you could, teach a computer to play or is incredibly challenging. And he has like, a ton of spots where you play around a lot of things. So a lot of weird, dynamics of playing this deck of like, very easily I kill you this turn. It's deterministic. And spots are like, well, I can kind of play around most things, but which ones do I pick?
Right. So we're going to pay 2 for this amulet as we get in with our Titan and our Construct. Titan's going to trigger This time with the namelet on the board, so going to be much nicer than the last Titan trigger we were given. And Will still has not actually played a land for turn, so that Echoing Deeps can still be played.
And that, to me, looks to be like a big part of things.
Right, yeah. So we can get something like, Lotus Fields out, sacrifice some lands.
Then there's a second Lotus Field trigger. Sacrifice 2 more lands. Okay. Yeah. Looked like Jack was maybe thinking about responding, but decided not to.
Yeah, so 6 mana available. We're going to tap it all down, get out Lumra. We're going to mill these 4, get back all of these lands. I mean, this just has got to be pretty devastating.
Yeah, I think the game is over now. I might have missed something here, but basically what's going to happen is, like I mentioned, there's no land drop yet. That Vesuva should enter as a copy of Lotus Field. I imagine Will sacrifice, the Lotus Fields proper, and then has all this mana we're floating, and then has Aftermath Analyst. And that will let us sort of go again. And I think Will has a way to go get another Titan, sort of start chaining off, or get like a Dryad of the Elysian Grove plus a Valakut. It might be a little off deterministic. I couldn't quite make out Will's hand, but either way, this is so much mana.
I believe Will's hand is Echoing Deeps, Analyst, Boseiju, Otawara.
Okay. So you can Otawara back the Lumra to go again. You can also Otawara back the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple different lines there. Looks like those are all the bouncing from the 3 bounce lands. So those are going to go back to our hand.
Right. We're going to play our Analyst. I mean, we have infinity mana. Going to mill a Titan, a Pact, and a Boseiju. And if you're Jack right now, do you think this is mostly just, okay, let me see all the cards in your deck before I die?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I also think, Will's really close. I thought Will had another way to go get a thing. He doesn't quite have it yet, and Jack does have some infinite combos available to him. So Jack can theoretically win if it comes back. So I think that's sort of what we're seeing from Jack here. Is like, okay, like let me see that you actually have it. / I might be able to just win this game. So
sure, yeah. As we're resolving all of these triggers still. Got these 2 Lotuses up, and it looks like we're passing back to Jack. I mean, we've got the Otawaras and the Boseiju backing us up, but I mean, like you said, there are infinites available.
Yeah, I think that's actually maybe what's going on here with Will. Is Will's actually just wanting to leave up the Otawara and the Boseiju right now, and basically just be like, okay, if I have these, I basically can't die. As Sting Scourger makes its debut.
Bounces back the Primeval Titan to Will's hand. And then we are going to see, which one is this?
This is Pashik Mons, I believe.
All right, doesn't. So we're just passing back to Will. I mean, surely Will has it locked up from here.
Yes, yeah. Now there's like, you can see how much quicker Will's moving. We're gonna get a mirror pool. We're gonna probably make another Titan. Yeah, we just actually so we have haste, which is lethal with the life total because of how big Lumra and everything is. So, yeah, you're seeing a moment there of I think Will maybe could have gone for it, but I don't know if he was deterministic, and so I think made a really heads up choice there. It's like, well, I might whiff, I might not. What if I just left up my interaction and just had big green idiots? And it was a plan that worked.
Yeah, absolutely. As we are going to take a look here at the deck list, here is Jack's Goblins list. I mean, a lot to digest here, Mason, but let's take a look at the sideboard specifically. I mean, I'm seeing 3 Damping Spheres. I I mean, what are you thinking about this sideboard?
Well, sorry, I was screenshotting this deck to play later. So 3 Damping Spheres, that's first up, and then 2 Disruptor Flutes. Once again, I'm no Goblins expert. I've played more of the deck than Twitch chat would probably believe, but which I've played a lot with it, but I haven't played in recent years. And I can imagine Disruptor Flute is a card that you could theoretically bring in. When it enters, you choose a card name, and spells in the chosen name cost 3 more to cast. And then activated abilities of the source of the chosen name can't be activated. So it's like a Pithy Needle that adds 3. I think this is much more a situation of Jack might just have some goblins in the main deck that aren't very good, and they aren't for these kinds of like combo matchups. So even though Disruptor Flute adding 3 mana to something like Italian might not be the best thing in the world, it might be enough. We might also just see one of the lands get chosen, right? Like Hand War Battlements, Mirror Pool, things of that nature, in order to stop some crazy Titan shenanigans. So maybe you can't stop Titan proper, but you Disruptor Flute that. I could see that being a very real line here for Jack.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. As we're gonna take a look over at the Amulet Titan list from Will, and as you said, this deck has been changing a lot lately, and I mean, there's a bunch of new lines and graveyard integrations. What are your thoughts looking at what Will's got here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that kind of jump out to me. We saw how Odawara was kind of nice. That's pretty, something we could see again. Seal of Removal, just bouncing a creature to the other's hand. We haven't talked about it too much, but Goblin's deck does have a combo kill where it kind of makes infinite goblins and then has things that sack and deal damage to the opponent when a goblin dies, and you just make a ton of goblins, kill your opponent. So I imagine we'll see that and some various other sideboard cards to fight over things like that, like Vampire's Vengeance. Deal 2 damage to all the non-creatures. Sorry, all non-vampire creatures. So Will, hoping not to run into vampires this weekend, but
Yeah, as we're gonna go ahead and get down into our game here. Game 2 of this match. Will Krueger up a game. Jack on the play here with the Goblins deck. We're seeing some Kiki Jikis. We're seeing Conspicuous Snoop.
there's Vampire's Vengeance for Will on this mulligan.
Yeah, looks like that was brought in. And we're just gonna play a Scalding Tarn and pass over to Will. And that's going to be a Crumbling Vestige Grazer into a Bounce and get the Vestige back into hand. Nice start for Will here.
Very fast here. Lots of mana available. And you're seeing like the Amulet Titan deck can go kind of wild, produce a ton of mana in one turn. Also just sort of, can get to 6 mana on turn 3, turn 4 via doing things like Grazer and just making these land drops.
Yeah, now what I'm not seeing in the sand from Jack here is a Damping Sphere. I know he brought him in, saw it as he was quickly flipping through the deck here. And we're going to play this Conspicuous Snoop.
Yeah, and this is a big part of it. So the Snoop, you get to play with the top card of your deck revealed, and then it has all activated abilities of Goblin cards. So if you play the Bogart Harbinger, you can go get Kiki Jiki. You make a billion Snoops. The last one targets the Harbinger, which searches, and now we have a game. Jack wins. So we're going to make a billion Kiki Jikis because we're going to tutor for Kiki Jiki with the Harbinger, put it on top. Then we're going to make a bunch of copies, go crazy. Then we'll go search up, things like Pashlik, Mons, etc. Now, actually, Jack has a couple Kiki Jikis in hand. I don't know how many are in his deck, but it seemed to be
2 Kiki Jikis in his deck.
Yeah, so I don't know how many he has in hand. There's at least one. Typically,
I think he has 2. I think he has 2 in hand.
If he has 2, he doesn't win here. There might be some new addition to the deck when it comes to comboing. Yeah, and Jack unfortunately drew both Kiki Jikis, so normally this would be game over.
Oh, and the Vengeance going to just deal with the Snoop. We got Trash Master on the top of the deck. Unfortunate to have the 2 Kiki Jikis there.
Yeah, that's a really tough spot to be in. I almost wonder, if Jack needed to activate Krinko, get Skirt Prospector. I don't know. It's a really tough spot to be when you draw these sort of, dead-ish card combo pieces. It's really tough. In fair matchups, Kiki Jiki actually goes kind of crazy in this deck. You copy some of your things like Runbout Holdmaster, you grow your team, they die, you get a bunch of cards. Not the kind of game Will Krueger's going to play this weekend.
Yeah, as for Will, we're just gonna see Spelunking come down, and we're gonna see the Bog exile Jack's graveyard here, as we are once again going to see the Runbolt Horde Master for Jack. We know that the Trash Master was the pickup for the turn.
I just noticed Jack's flex slot hoodie has the word goblin written on it.
You know, I
That's sick.
appreciate his love for the game.
Yeah. Love for the gobbo.
Love over the Gobos. We're gonna see Titan come down for Will. I mean, oh, this is brutal. This is so tough.
Yeah, and I mean, this is sort of the problem with decks like goblins is there. And I've said this for a while. I actually think goblins is a lot closer to the top tiers of modern than people think it is. It does some surprisingly strong things. I mean, look, Jack's 2-0 in this tournament so far, right?
Mhm.
Has won some rounds. And we just saw how if we didn't have the Kiki Jiki, we did just have a win set up there. We can grind a lot more than people think we can. And we have access to some really powerful, cards that no one is really respecting. That being said, your opponents are doing things like this, where they
Yeah.
are, really taking over this game in huge, like over the top ways that are really hard to interact with. And they, are ready to fight through a lot of things post war that you're going to be doing. Even if some of your, goblins are weird, they often overlap with cards that, these players are used to fighting through.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're just gonna have a couple of bounce lands for Will here. I think that was a Damping Sphere picked up.
It was.
I mean, oh, we've got the Boseiju. We're gonna float the 2 mana.
Yeah, and yeah, you actually see Will being like, cool. I think that's actually a really smart play from Will. If there's something like Summoner's Pact, we obviously would have seen the Boseiju. But in this position, it's just like, well, I don't really need to do this right now. Maybe you do something with the mana on your turn, and I'll take a draw step at least. What's the worst that happens? I'm down 1 or 2 mana on the turn. Oh no.
Yeah, as Crumbling Vestige going to be enough to get that Boseiju out and deal with the Damping Sphere. And we're going to go ahead for Jack and get a land off of that. And looks like we're swinging him with the Titan again. Getting our lands.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Will's just making sure, like, is there any way I can, like, for sure win this turn? What can I do to make sure that I don't get got from nowhere? If Will is aware of the Goblin stack and the combo, which I imagine he knows there's a combo, and there's like some version that involves Kiki Jiki. Will probably also knows Jack has Kiki Jiki in hand, so he might be thinking like, okay, maybe I want to get like this Teleria West to go get. You could get another pack. You could also get something like another Odawara from the sideboard and just like have those sort of things up ready to go. I think a lot of roads lead to Rome here for Will Krueger.
Sure, as we are transmuting this Teleria West, deciding what we want to pick up.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd really want besides either more Titans, Odawara plus a bounce land, and maybe a Valakut if you want to try and get a Dryad win going, but that's kind of far away. But Will's got something. You could always, go for the sagas. People try to rely on that some of the time.
Sure.
Of note, we learned last weekend from the Canadian RC that I was able to do coverage with that Dom sideboards out his Urza sagas all the time. Which was surprising to me that basically this almost always takes them out. So Will, friends with Dom, very easily could be doing a very similar thing here. Might have kept them in 2 just because doesn't know what Goblins has in the sideboard. It's like, well, I might need the speed.
Sure. As we are going to get the Pact, get the Titan. Looks like Lotus Field, Otawara going to be the lands that we pick up on the ETB. Sacrifice a couple.
All right.
And then we've got a Grazer to come down, play a bounce land, bounce the Otawara. And I think we're just passing back over to Jack. I mean, Will should have it, I think, locked up next turn, unless Jack is able to do something incredible.
What about Trash Master? I'm the Trash Man.
I don't know if at this moment in time I would call the Trash Master incredible.
That's tough. That was our play.
We're going to attack and block and then extend the hand. That is going to be a clean 2-0 for Will Krueger. Congratulations. You know, again, expertly piloting a very hard to pilot deck. Congratulations, Will. Very well played.
Yep, great play there from Will. Expect nothing less. One of the things about Will is his technical play is so tight and so clean. If you ever watch him play Magic, especially like I think it really showed itself with Hammer back during like the MH2 metagame, where we saw Will really dominating with Hammer, playing it sort of all the time, and just had very crisp, clean play. Did a good job of kind of knowing when to go for it, when to play around something. Amulet Titan kind of have some similar vibes when it comes to this exact play style we're talking about here of like tight technical play, knowing when to go for it, access to these sort of random kills. So I'm really excited to see, you know, what led Krueger to want to play this. Is it just like a good vibe situation? Is it liking it more than Breach? You know, I know that Dom Harvey sent like a Discord message to his testing team before top 8ing the RC in Canada. That was like, you know, if my Breach matchup was good, I'm playing it. And then the underlying message was, Dom, we know you're playing it no matter what. But, you know, Dom felt like the matchup was good. I'm curious to see sort of, you know, is that a prevailing thought among Titan players? You have a lot of Boseiju, you have a lot of strong sideboard cards, and you do have a pretty good matchup versus some of these other decks. Decks like Eldrazi that are trying to play these fair over-the-top mana games, with big mana, have always struggled against these Titan decks. That is a historic sort of thing. So, you know, maybe they're a little better than their predecessors. They've gotten some stronger cards, but seems unlikely. Seems unlikely your energy matchup's that good, especially as they're going really low on Blood Moons, right? That used to be a card that was a big problem. They're still very fast and efficient. They have Wear Tear, but okay. And then if your Breach matchup's good, then that really just leaves the Sewers deck as something to think about there with Black, White, Blink. So maybe this is just, you know, the secret pick.
Yeah, well, we will get answers to your questions because we are going to have an interview here in just a moment with our Amulet Titan player, Will Krueger. And personally, I'm very excited to ask him how he felt as soon as he realized his opponent was on Goblins. Because, you know, as we've talked about, this is a closed deck list, but also, as we mentioned, when you sit down and your opponent is wearing a hoodie that says Flex Slot Goblins, you know, maybe give something away. Hello, Will.
Hey.
Congratulations on that round 3. Very expertly played. Congrats on the 2-0.
Thank you.
I'm dying to know, how did you feel when you realized you were up against Goblins of all decks?
I know Jack, so I
Sure.
was like, oh, I'm paired against Jack. I know he's playing Goblins, so
Sure.
yeah, I don't know. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it sounded like kind of like bad matchup, but maybe because he has the conspicuous Snoop into the Harbinger, and you can't really do a lot about turn 3 kills. And I thought he might have Blood Moon, but he never played a basic land. He probably can't play Swamps, but like, I mean, deck's all red, so I don't know. I was worried about Blood Moon, and I boarded in some like an extra Boseiju and stuff. Because he might have had that. But yeah. So
makes sense there. So I guess my question to you, Will, is, you know, a lot of players going to this weekend, it's sort of like Breach and Energy is a lot of the talk of the town. What led you to Amulet? Do you think it's well positioned? Do you like the vibe? Sort of, how did we end up here?
Kind of a combination of those. I actually like the Breach matchup, which might be just like Cope, you know, and it's like, yeah, like, oh, my matchup against this like really broken deck with this like card that got unbanned and might be rebanned or whatever is actually really good. And it's like usually it's not, but I think this time it is. I don't know, because you're like a little bit slower than them, but like Boseiju is actually like really important. And normally when people say like, oh, I have like 3 or 4 disenchants in my deck, I'm good against Breach, like that's obviously like not really true. But if you're like racing each other and you buy one turn to then like untap and tighten them or whatever and either get another Boseiju or kill them or something, then that's pretty good. So yeah, I like the breach matchup a little bit. I like the energy matchup too. And it's not that good. It's like they have kind of a quick clock, but they're mostly just like kind of playing random creatures and stuff. And then the way the energy decks are built, like they'll have like 10 cards for breach and like a blood moon or in like 2 rare tears or something. And I don't know, I thought Amulet would be pretty good against that. And then I like the Eldrazi matchup too. And then the Frog matchup's bad, but I think people are playing it less. And then also my friend Nam won a qualifier on Magic Online, and he played no counter spells, and then other people started playing no counter spells, which is like exactly like what you want if you're just like trying to cast 6-mana card, you know. And they're playing Thoughtseize instead, which is still good, but not as good. So I was kind of thinking, a lot of things kind of lined up. I thought it'd be pretty good. So playing Amulet.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I guess
well, I mean, you clearly like have the chops to play Amulet. I mean, it is a deck that has evolved a lot over recent years. Like we've seen it, we were talking about earlier, integrate a lot more of the graveyard recently
Yep.
than it used to historically. What are your thoughts on the sort of current iteration of the deck with all of this Lumra stuff and this analyst stuff and all of that?
I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty important. I'm not really. I've been playing this deck for like a week. I played it in like 2017, like last when Coalition Relic and Trigger Major were in the deck and stuff. It was pretty different. That was like the last time I played Amulet. So I had to like learn like this week about all that stuff and like how it works and whatnot. But it's pretty good, I think, because you kind of gives you like an alternate angle. So it's like if they like Stonebrain your Titans or something, then you can get out from under that without actually much trouble because you have Zeniths and packs and stuff to go get Lumra and start. Hopefully you get like Amulet and Lumra and Lotus Fields and lands that generate mana, then you keep bringing them back, and then you keep copying the Lumra, and then you go through your whole deck, you besage all the permanents, and Dryad Valakut them out. It's kind of the goal there. But yeah, I had a guy, like, he went like turn 2 Stonebrain or whatever, and I had a oof. I had like the oof for it, but like if I didn't, my hand was like well set up anyway. To like just play through it. Like I could have played through it pretty well, and like I played some games online and stuff to practice, and like I was beating Stonebrains. I had like a super weird game where like my Lumra ended up in my graveyard, and they Stonebrained my Titans, and they also Stonebrained Valakut, and then I had to like shifting woodland my Lumra, which couldn't give me a trigger, and like I couldn't find my mirror pool, so I just kept attacking them for 6 after I besaged all their permanents. So you get some super weird spots, but like so yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time here to talk to us in the booth. It was great to see you. Good luck in the rest in the matches, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
As they flew me away from Will, I can just say goodbye to my friend. It's all right because we have more magic for you. So I'm down for that. If we're gonna run away from Will, let's run to some magic.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got our backup feature match here ready to go. I'm excited to get into it and see what we've got, what these players are bringing. But very great to have an opportunity to talk to Will there and hear about the Titan deck. I mean, what's really cool about this tournament and this format this weekend is that we're in our 3rd round, and we've seen all these different decks doing really well as we're getting into our backup right now. Looks like we've got Eldrazi Ramp Mirror, John Garvey on the left, Grayson Nemitz on the right here.
Grayson's someone you saw in our champs last year.
Yeah, looks like we are in game 2, it appears. Grayson up a game.
It also looks like we've come in at a weird spot where there's 2 dueling Karns, but Grayson seems to have been on the board for longer, or at least has gone up more than John's has.
Yeah, as we are getting this Micah Spawn here. I mean, very powerful card. Yeah, the dueling cards are very interesting because John, obviously his card has less loyalty, but also has this liquid metal coating on the board, which to me feels like would have come out before Grayson's card.
Yeah, I have the feeling that John maybe got coding, maybe got a land or something with an activation, and then Karn came down, and that would probably explain the like loyalty dynamics we have in play.
Right, as we are seeing Malevolent Rumble for John here. Not sure what card he just picked up. Didn't quite catch it.
I did not as well. I think it was one of the Eldrazi.
I think that's a good guess. See, we've got our Scion token. We've got the Haywire Might.
So you notice John has 3 different piles in the graveyard area. Sideways one's Exile. Top one is all the card types that aren't represented for Delirium, and the bottom is Delirium count. Specifically card type count, because Emrakul you could technically reduce by 1 and it still reduces. But that's sort of what's going on. This is open information to both players. Everyone kind of plays Emrakul. Wouldn't even be surprised if Emrakul won or is involved in game at number 1. So it's just a way to save some time there. And Grayson doesn't really have a graveyard, so it's kind of doing both roles, just by being a pile.
Yeah, as we are back over to Grayson now, going to go ahead and attack in, set up our blocks here. And this is going to be a K command coming down. What is that? X's 1?
Just 1. Yeah, I think we just had the Utopia Sprawl and the Scion or whatever type mana going. Excuse me, it was not the Utopia Sprawl, but the Sanctum. And so we just sort of like got Scry 1, remake the blocker.
Yeah. And it looks like for Grayson here, the Sowing Mycospawn going to come down.
And you're seeing just how important Sowing Mycospawn is in these mirrors. I mean, it's a great bridge card for this deck, especially with the Eldrazi Temple. It comes out so soon. But really what ends up happening is in these mirror matches, we see Bajuka Bog come together that graveyard. It's a great, John's pick up the cards. It's just a way to like get you ahead and put them behind, and becomes, weirdly one of the more important cards there. As once you're able to also search up Bog, your opponent can't really Emrakul you most likely, and that just puts you so far ahead.
Yeah, it looks like that is going to be a win for Grayson Nemitz, who I think just took down the match. It looks like these players are sideboarding here. So congratulations to Grayson. Also going to be 3-0 going into our next round here. Very well played. I mean, we came in, as we said, at a very awkward time, it looked like, in this game. And anytime you got decks like these that have dueling cards going on, that is a little bit of a headache playthrough. Looks like he piloted it very well.
Yep.
But yeah, that is going to do it for the coverage we have for round 3 at our Modern 10K Showdown. I mean, as I was saying before we got into this game, we've seen so many different decks. Even just then, it's the first time we've seen Eldrazi ramp today, and it's 3-0. We just saw Titan go 3-0. We've seen the black-white deck doing well. We've seen Breach doing well. I'm excited to see how the rest of this tournament unfolds, which will be here right after this break. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.